The world stopped spinning the moment fans noticed something was missing from Hailey Bieber's finger during her latest New York outing. No wedding ring. No explanation. Just silence. And in that silence, 1,000 theories were born. What started as a single missing accessory has now snowballed into the most dissected celebrity marriage crisis of the year, and honestly, the evidence is stacking up faster than anyone can deny. If you're invested in this unfolding drama, make sure to subscribe because this story is far from over and you won't want to miss what happens next. Justin and Hailey Bieber used to be the golden couple everyone rooted for. Young, beautiful, seemingly devoted to each other through thick and thin. Their wedding was a spectacle that dominated headlines for weeks. Their coordinated street style became Instagram goals for millions. Every appearance they made together screamed relationship perfection, or at least that's what we were led to believe. But somewhere between the glossy magazine covers and the carefully curated social media posts, cracks began to form. Small at first, barely noticeable to the casual observer. But for those paying attention, those who watched every story and analyzed every caption, the signs were impossible to ignore. The first real alarm bell rang when Hailey stepped out solo in Manhattan looking absolutely stunning in her signature model off-duty aesthetic. She radiated confidence and style, turning heads as she always does. But eagle-eyed fans immediately zeroed in on what wasn't there. Her wedding ring was conspicuously absent from her left hand. Now, missing a ring once might be explained away as a simple oversight, or perhaps she was getting it cleaned or resized. But this wasn't an isolated incident. Multiple sightings followed where Hailey continued to appear ringless, each time fueling more speculation and concern among their devoted followers. Meanwhile, Justin's social media presence took on an increasingly strange tone. Gone were the adoring posts about his wife that used to flood his feed. Instead, his account became a confusing mixture of spiritual quotes about healing, cryptic messages about setting boundaries, and random religious scripture. One day he'd post something about finding peace through faith. The next day, he'd share a motivational quote about recognizing when relationships become transactional. Then, without warning, he'd throw up a sultry photo of Hailey with a song about shaking body parts playing in the background. The whiplash was real, and fans couldn't make sense of what they were witnessing. The disconnect between their public personas became increasingly obvious. Hailey was out there building her road beauty empire with laser focus and determination. She attended events looking flawless, gave interviews about entrepreneurship and self-care, collaborated with major brands, and presented herself as an independent powerhouse who didn't need anyone's validation. She was thriving professionally. That much was clear. Her skincare line was selling out constantly, her influence in the beauty industry was undeniable, and she seemed to be everywhere all at once. But noticeably absent from her narrative was any mention of her marriage or her husband. Justin, on the other hand, seemed to be drifting. His energy felt scattered and unfocused. One moment, he was posting about his renewed faith and commitment to spiritual growth. The next, he was completely silent for days on end, leaving fans wondering where he'd disappeared to. When he did resurface, his posts often felt performative rather than genuine, like he was checking boxes rather than genuinely connecting with his audience. The man who once couldn't stop gushing about his wife now seemed incapable of expressing authentic affection without it feeling forced or staged. Then came the incident that really set off alarm bells across the internet. Justin's mother, Patty Millett, posted a public prayer request, asking everyone to lift her son up in their thoughts and prayers. She wrote about constantly praying for Justin's healing, using language that suggested something serious was happening behind the scenes. This wasn't a casual mention or a light-hearted ask. This was a mother genuinely concerned about her son's well-being, concerned enough to publicly ask millions of strangers to intervene spiritually on his behalf. The post immediately went viral, with fans demanding to know what was wrong. What did Justin need healing from? Was he struggling with his mental health again? Was there trouble in his marriage? Had he relapsed into old destructive patterns? The speculation ran wild, with theories ranging from reasonable to completely outlandish. Justin's response did nothing to calm the storm. Instead of addressing the genuine concern his mother's post had generated, he made a joke about needing healing from a rolled ankle he got playing ping pong. Haha, very funny, except nobody was laughing. The deflection felt insulting to fans who genuinely cared about his well-being. If everything was truly fine, why did his mother feel compelled to make that public plea? Why couldn't Justin give a straight answer about what was going on in his life? And most importantly, where was Hailey during all of this? Why wasn't she saying anything to support her husband or address the growing concerns? Her silence spoke volumes, suggesting either she didn't know what was happening with Justin or she'd simply stopped caring enough to comment. When the couple did appear together in public, which was becoming increasingly rare, the interactions felt stiff and rehearsed. They'd coordinate their outfits perfectly, smile for the cameras, and play the part of devoted spouses. But anyone watching closely could see there was no genuine warmth between them. No spontaneous affection, no inside jokes, no moments of unguarded connection. They looked like two extremely attractive people standing next to each other rather than two people in love. The spark that once defined their relationship had been replaced by something that felt more like obligation. Body language experts had a field day analyzing their appearances. The way they positioned themselves at events, the lack of natural physical contact, the forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Everything pointed to a couple going through the motions rather than genuinely enjoying each other's company. They'd mastered the art of looking good together, while simultaneously looking completely disconnected from one another. It was honestly impressive how they managed to be so coordinated in their appearance while being so obviously misaligned in their emotional connection. But the real explosion happened during Hailey's interview with the Wall Street Journal. The interviewer asked what seemed like a straightforward question about whether Hailey felt competitive now that her Rhode products were being sold alongside Selena Gomez's rare beauty line in major retailers. It was a reasonable question given the history between the two women and their parallel journeys in the beauty industry. Hailey could have given a diplomatic answer about celebrating all women in beauty or how there's room for everyone to succeed. Instead, she delivered a line that instantly became internet infamy. She said she didn't feel competitive with people she wasn't inspired by. Let that sink in for a moment. The implication was crystal clear, even though she never specifically named Selena. The shade was unmistakable, the dig was intentional, and the internet absolutely lost its mind. Within hours, the quote was everywhere. Twitter exploded with reactions. TikTok creators made countless videos dissecting the comment, and Reddit threads grew to thousands of comments analyzing every possible interpretation. Hailey's team scrambled to do damage control, insisting the comment wasn't directed at anyone specific and that people were reading too much into it. But come on, we're not stupid. When you have a documented history with someone, when your husband famously dated that person for years, when you've been caught liking shady posts about that person, and when your fan bases have been at war for half a decade, you don't get to make a comment like that and pretend it exists in a vacuum. Everyone knew exactly who Hailey was talking about, and trying to walk it back only made her look worse. It showed either a complete lack of self-awareness or a deliberate attempt to stir up drama while maintaining plausible deniability. The timing of the comment made it even more suspicious. Here was Hailey, supposedly in a happy marriage, yet still taking shots at her husband's ex-girlfriend who has moved on completely and is now happily married herself. Selena Gomez has been nothing but gracious in recent years. She's asked her fans repeatedly to stop bullying Hailey. She's posed for photos with her at public events. She's done everything possible to show that she's over whatever happened in the past and ready to coexist peacefully. Meanwhile, Hailey can't seem to resist throwing subtle jabs whenever the opportunity presents itself. This led many fans to theorize that Hailey's issues with Selena might actually be symptomatic of deeper problems in her marriage. Maybe she feels like she's constantly competing with a ghost. Maybe she senses that Justin never fully got over his first love. Maybe she's realized that being Justin's wife means forever being compared to the woman who came before her. Whatever the reason, the obsession seems unhealthy and counterproductive. Because every time Hailey takes a shot at Selena, she only ends up making herself look insecure and petty while Selena continues to rise above it all with grace and dignity. The contrast between how the two women have handled their shared, complicated history is striking. Selena has focused on her career, her mental health advocacy, her thriving beauty brand, and now her marriage to Benny Blanco. She radiates genuine happiness and contentment. She doesn't need to throw shade or make cryptic comments because she's genuinely moved forward with her life. Hailey, meanwhile, seems stuck in an endless cycle of trying to prove something. Prove she's happy, prove she's successful, prove she won, prove she's better. But the constant need to prove anything suggests uncertainty rather than confidence. Around the same time as the interview controversy, Hailey posted a series of photos that had fans raising their eyebrows. She did a full bedroom photo shoot to promote eye patches from her road line. The photos featured her lounging in a black bra on matching black pillowcases with sultry lighting and suggestive poses. Look, there's nothing wrong with a beautiful woman doing a sexy photo shoot. But the context mattered here. This was supposedly a happily married woman creating content that gave off serious single energy. The vibe was less devoted wife and more independent woman reminding everyone she still got it. Justin's response to these photos was equally bizarre. Here he posted one of them to his Instagram story, but instead of adding a sweet comment about how beautiful his wife looks, he added a track called Shake That Ass. Romantic, right? Fans were divided on how to interpret this. Some thought it was just Justin being playful and showing appreciation for his wife's body. Others saw it as mockery, like he was reducing her carefully crafted brand content to something crude and objectifying. Either way, it didn't read as the action of a man deeply in love with and respectful of his wife's professional endeavors. The whole interaction highlighted how differently they seem to operate now. Hailey is trying to build a serious business empire and establish herself as a legitimate entrepreneur and beauty mogul. She's giving thoughtful interviews, curating her image carefully, and working to be taken seriously in a competitive industry. Justin, meanwhile, seems unable or unwilling to match her energy or support her endeavors in a meaningful way. He treats her posts like content to consume and react to rather than celebrating her achievements as a true partner would. Insiders who claim to know the couple have started speaking out, though of course these anonymous sources should be taken with appropriate skepticism. Some say Justin has been struggling with his mental health again and feels overwhelmed by the pressures of fame, marriage, and living up to expectations. They paint him as someone who rushed into marriage before fully healing from his past traumas and relationships. Others claim Hailey is exhausted from essentially managing Justin's emotional state while also trying to build her own career and identity separate from being Mrs. Bieber. A few sources suggest the root problem is that they got married too quickly for the wrong reasons. Justin was rebounding from his on-again, off-again relationship with Selena and wanted to prove he'd moved on. Hailey had been waiting in the wings for years and saw her opportunity to finally have the man she'd crushed on since she was a teenager. They confused intensity and timing for genuine compatibility. The whirlwind romance felt exciting and passionate, but may have lacked the solid foundation needed for a lasting marriage. What's particularly telling is how they've stopped defending each other publicly. There was a time when Justin would aggressively shut down anyone who criticized Hailey, writing long Instagram posts about how blessed he was to have her and how people needed to respect his wife. Hailey would similarly jump to Justin's defense whenever his past was brought up or his mental health struggles were used against him. That united front has completely disappeared. Now, when one faces criticism, the other remains conspicuously silent, leaving them to deal with the fallout alone. During her Wall Street Journal interview, there was a moment that perfectly encapsulated how controlled and calculated everything about their public image has become. When asked about competition with other beauty brands, Hailey started to answer, but her publicist literally interrupted mid-sentence to redirect the conversation. Think about what that means. Hailey couldn't even finish answering a basic business question without her team stepping in to manage the narrative. Everything she says is monitored, every response vetted, every public appearance choreographed. That level of control suggests deep fear about what might happen if authentic feelings were expressed. Later in that same interview, Hailey did say something genuine about how annoying it is to constantly be pitted against other people and other brands. She said she never asked for that comparison game. And you know what? That statement actually rang true. It must be exhausting to have every business move you make analyzed through the lens of your husband's ex-girlfriend. To never be able to just exist as your own person with your own achievements without everything being filtered through that rivalry. The problem is, Hailey herself keeps feeding into it with comments like the one about not being inspired by her competition. If she truly wanted to move past the comparisons, she'd stop making veiled references that everyone knows are about Selena. She'd refuse to engage with questions about competition between their brands. She'd focus solely on Rhode's merits without positioning it in opposition to anyone else. Instead, she keeps poking the bear and then acting surprised when people react. It's a pattern that suggests she's not actually ready to move on from the rivalry, because on some level, it keeps her relevant and in the conversation. Selena Gomez's approach has been the complete opposite. She doesn't do interviews where she makes cryptic comments about other people in the industry. She doesn't like shady posts or drop subtle hints on social media. She simply exists in her own lane, celebrating her wins quietly and gracefully. When Rare Beauty became one of the best-selling beauty brands, she didn't use it as an opportunity to throw shade at anyone. When she got engaged to Benny Blanco, she didn't make it about anyone from her past. She's genuinely moved forward while Hailey seems perpetually stuck looking backward. The optics of this are terrible for Hailey. Every time she makes a comment that could be interpreted as a dig at Selena, public opinion shifts more in Selena's favor. People see Selena as the mature one who rose above the drama and found real happiness. They see Hailey as the insecure wife who can't stop obsessing over the woman who came before her. Fair or not, that's the narrative that's solidified in the public consciousness. And as long as Hailey keeps feeding that narrative with her words and actions, it's going to be nearly impossible to change. The marriage itself seems to be crumbling under the weight of all this external and internal pressure. When your relationship becomes performance art, when every interaction is staged for public consumption, when you're living your life according to what will play well on social media rather than what's genuine, that's not sustainable. Real relationships require privacy, vulnerability, mistakes, growth, and honesty. None of those things can exist when every moment is documented and analyzed by millions of people who feel entitled to have opinions about your love life. Justin and Hailey chose this life to some extent. They courted the spotlight, leveraged their relationship for publicity, and built their brands partially on being a couple. But there's a point where that trade-off becomes too costly. When the marriage exists primarily as content rather than as an actual partnership. When you stay together because the alternative would be admitting failure publicly rather than because you genuinely want to be together. That's when things become truly toxic and unsustainable. The question everyone's asking now is whether they'll actually go through with divorce or if they'll continue this charade indefinitely. Some celebrities stay in dead marriages for years to avoid the PR nightmare and tabloid frenzy that comes with splitting up. They lead essentially separate lives while maintaining the fiction of a happy marriage for public consumption. Others reach a breaking point where pretending becomes more exhausting than just being honest about the fact that things didn't work out. If Justin and Hailey do split, it won't shock anyone who's been paying attention. All the signs have been there for months now. The distance, the separate lives, the lack of genuine affection, the cryptic posts, the missing ring, the family members asking for prayers. These aren't the markers of a couple going through a rough patch. These are the markers of a relationship that's already over in everything but official status. The only question is who will be brave enough to pull the plug first and admit what everyone already knows. Whatever happens next, one thing is certain. This has been a masterclass in how not to handle a public relationship. The constant performance, the inability to stay off social media, the passive-aggressive posts, the dragging exes into current drama, the lack of boundaries between public and private life. All of it has contributed to creating a situation where the relationship itself became secondary to the image of the relationship. And once you cross that line, it's nearly impossible to find your way back to something real and sustainable. The saddest part is that underneath all the drama and speculation, there are two real people who presumably cared about each other at some point, who made promises to each other and meant them in the moment, who wanted their relationship to work and thought they could beat the odds. But wanting something isn't enough when the foundation is shaky and the external pressures are overwhelming. Sometimes love isn't enough to overcome incompatibility, poor timing, unresolved past issues, and the crushing weight of public scrutiny. So, where does this leave us? watching and waiting to see what happens next in the slow-motion collapse of what was supposed to be a fairy tale romance. Wondering if they'll surprise everyone and find a way back to each other, or if we're witnessing the final chapter before the inevitable split. Analyzing every post and public appearance for clues about the current state of their union. It's become a spectacle that's equal parts fascinating and deeply uncomfortable because we're watching real people's pain play out for entertainment. The Bieber marriage started with so much promise and hope. Young love conquering all obstacles. Second chances and new beginnings. A bad boy reformed by the love of a good woman. All the romantic narratives we love to believe in. But reality rarely cooperates with fairy tales. And the reality is that Justin and Hailey seem to be two people who got caught up in a moment and made life-altering decisions before they were truly ready. Now they're living with the consequences, while the whole world watches and judges and speculates. If you've made it this far, you're clearly as invested in this unfolding drama as the rest of us. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any updates as this situation continues to develop, because something tells me we're far from the end of the story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.